Welcome to the Living Medicine podcast, where we talk about ethical medical use of psychedelic psychotherapy, teaching skills, examining the issues, and interviewing interesting people. Now let's start today's show.
Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Sandy Newest, co-founder of the Living Medicine Institute and lead trainer for Living Medicine Institute, where we provide content and training and resources for clinical and medical professionals around psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy using ketamine. And I am also the host of Living Medicine, which is a podcast where we interview people who are influential in the psychedelic world, as well as clinical and medical professionals who are doing the work. And I am super excited today to be able to have as a guest on this to Matt Zemon. I'm sorry, is that how I say your last name, or is it?
It is how you say it. Yes. I never always talked about first names. You've never talked about last names.
Right. Well, the people who I host this, Rise 25, have coached me on asking before we start. So I should have asked before we start. But Matt is the author of 4 best-selling books, and they are quite popular. The Beginner's Guide to Psychedelics, The Veteran's Guide to Psychedelics, Psychedelics for Everyone, and Beyond the Trip. They're also, I think that aren't you doing the Advanced Guide now? Isn't that in the works? We have a couple of
therapist editions. We have a Veterans Guide Therapist Edition and a Beginner's Guide Therapist and Coach Edition. So for professionals working in the space, these are good tools to have with supplemental materials and all sorts of good things. With Dr. Ken Weingard and I did those together.
Oh, interesting. I did not realize that those were therapist resources. I will definitely have to check them out. And, if we can incorporate them and pass them on to the people in our program, I would be happy to do that.
So amazing. Love that.
Yeah. So Matt also is on a number of podcasts and radio shows. He did a TED Talk in South Africa. Psychedelics are catalysts, not cures. And it's wildly impressive that it has received over 500,000 views, which suggests that people should watch that, myself included. So yeah, I know you do many, many other things, but I appreciate you for being here.
Sandy, I'm glad. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for what you do with the Living Medicine Institute. And thank you. I love having podcast where not only do you know what you're talking about, but we have professionals who are working in this space and trying to think of how, just because it's legal doesn't make it right. So how do I work with these medicines more effectively? And I love that we can talk about that and talk about it without a turf war.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so interesting that you say that, because one of the things that I also want to highlight is, just because it came up, is that, we in the psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, like currently it is the purview of licensed clinical and medical professionals. And if we're going to stay in that lane and stay in the legal lane and follow the science, but let us also just acknowledge that there is ancient wisdom that is a part of this work that has been part of humankind for thousands of years. And there have been extraordinarily skilled people on the underground who are doing really good work. And there's also a lot of openness as we get more and more open to psychedelics and more people are trying them. There's also a lot of concern. So it's kind of a both and situation in my opinion.
It's totally an and I love starting with a little context around this. I mean, it's so easy for those of us who are working in the medicalization, the therapy world with the psychedelic assisted therapy to get lost in the newsletters and the emails and the hype. And just as a reminder, and an elder in the space has reminded me of this. So he says, look, 20 years of clinical trials of psychedelics, maybe 5,000 people have had a psychedelic in that model. Or again, legal psychedelics. It's going to take 3 years-ish before 10,000 people go through their model. When MDMA becomes legalized with all the bottlenecks and things that are happening, it'll take about 3 years for 100,000 people to go through that model. Last year in America, 8 million people tried psilocybin, 2 million people tried LSD. If we take away microdosing, 5 million Americans had a macrodose experience. So,
and that's in 1 year.
In less than a year. Yeah, in a year.
Oh, interesting.
In a year.
Yeah.
So most Americans today are experiencing psychedelics outside of the lanes that our medical professionals swim in. And while this research is incredibly important and it is shifting our cultural understanding of psychedelics, there's a whole bunch of citizen scientists that are working out there. And there are a whole bunch of wisdom keepers that have been keeping this medicine going during Prohibition, during the psychedelic renaissance, that there's lots we can learn from. So it's we need all the innovation from science, and we need to listen to the people who've been carrying the medicine and where really the vast majority of the work is done.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that because I remember there's a conference that I've attended a couple times where, it's always like we get the academics and we get the researchers up
Hmm.
on stage. And what is true with all due respect, because they are essential and amazing and are doing
Absolutely.
amazing work. It's just that that's not all there is. And then there was somebody from the quote underground. And for anybody who's listening who doesn't know what that is, that's somebody who's working with psychedelic medicines that may or may not be legal and, is not in that purview of the like legal medical therapy office, but may have been doing it for a really long time, may have learned a ton, may also be a licensed clinician, or at least have drawn from all of that, or maybe educated or mentored or self-educated to where they're doing extraordinary work. And this person just repeatedly took down the house, standing ovations. Like it was like, no PowerPoint, just speaking from the heart. Here's how I do healing work with people. Here's what's so important in that.
I love that. And I love the openness to the professionals who chose to come in and spend some time with that person. Not that anyone, I mean, we're all new to this work. No matter how long you've been working it, we're still new to this work, considering that's been being done for thousands of years. So how do we again learn from this? With I think one caveat. There are members of the medical community who believe that psychedelics and ketamine be probably the prime example is just a biochemical reaction.
Right. Ketamine's perfect for that. Yeah.
And there's many, many, many people who've been practicing with these medicines who believe it's a biochemical, psychosocial, spiritual process. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a very big ideological divide. And that leads to ketamine clinics that have dentist chairs or dialysis chairs and Fox News on the TV and people checking their phones and getting their medicine. And it leads to clinics that have blankets and eye masks and playlists and very intention setting and integration. Both are legal. It's a philosophical difference. I don't know what's right. I know what's right for my practice. I know what's right for what I would choose. But
Mm-hmm.
knowing that just because it's legal it doesn't make it right for me or for you or for anybody. And how do we think about what kind of practice do we want to do with these medicines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say it about ketamine because just, like it's such an interesting thing. Like I always tell people, like it's funny that you mentioned that about their phones and, Netflix and things like that. Because I always tell
Hmm.
people like if you're vetting a clinic and they let somebody sit on their phone or they have, Netflix playing, like they don't know what they're doing because that's not what ketamine is. So, so from that perspective, like when you say we all have to kind of figure out how we want to practice, like what are your thoughts? What are your recommendations? Like what do you need? What needs to happen here? That's big, I get it.
It
But
is big, but I mean, I think if we look at how have humans interacted with these types of
mm,
medicines for thousands of years, it hasn't been a biochemical choice. It was
right.
let's be in community, let's experience these medicines, let's be in a place where we can surrender to an altered state, and
Mm,
then let's allow our wisdom to come through. Let's connect with spirit, whatever that is for that person or for that community, um, and let's remember who we are
mm,
and work through whatever it is that we're working through. Um,
mhm,
I believe we can work with a range of medicines with kind of that underlying philosophy.
mm,
I get nervous when people say I'm a guru, I'm a shaman, I'm a healer, because that is, in my mind, taking, and again, this is my opinion, that's
yeah.
taking away the power from the person. Once again, giving the agency up to somebody else. Oh, this guru helped me. No,
Mm,
the medicine put you into a state where you could do these things for yourself. You could feel these
mm,
things for yourself. Well, ketamine is technically not a psychedelic. The same effect can happen for people with
sure.
that medicine.
I always kind of argue against that. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I would say yes, it is in the same, just within a rather short period of time. So, but that's
Yeah,
just my
I
particular
get that
bias
too.
for
I
that.
get that too. And it's our only legal option. And I really am appreciative of the professionals who are using that legal option that we have today to
Hmm.
assist people in this process and to help
Yeah.
them, in my mind, prepare for what could happen and help them set intentions and think about, prepare their bodies, their minds, their spirits, their families, their homes for that ketamine experience so that when they come back, they can start integrating and taking those insights, the awakenings, the awarenesses that happened on the ketamine and moving that into life, turning what could be a spiritual experience into a spiritual life. And that is, to me, what integration is all about,
Mm.
regardless of the psychedelic. How do we increase the efficacy? We turn it into a lifestyle, not the medicine, the practice, the belief, the understanding.
So a million different things came to mind with me in that, and I want to get into the integration piece in a minute.
Mhm.
But when you and I talked before too, you just did emphasize the importance of community in doing this work, spiritual community, professional community, and then now you're just saying, how do we go back into our community? So, that is also another ancient wisdom piece. These medicines were always meant to be done in community, in my opinion. So why do you think that's so important? What is it about that?
Oh, again, here, what I've come to know, I've come to learn is that we're all deeply interconnected. We're interconnected as a species. We're interconnected to the nature all around us. We're not separate and apart from nature. We are nature. And these tools remind us of that. Now, while we can remember, oh my God, we are deeply interconnected, I've grown up in a culture that said, you need to be somebody. You need to go do something. You need to succeed. You need to win. You need to take what's yours.
Wow.
And living that lifestyle, I was lonely. I wasn't involved in my community. I was barely involved in my family. And I worked and I worked and I worked and I provided. Um,
Mm.
and I forgot. I forgot that my happiness is being surrounded by love. My happiness is being able to give and to receive the love that is around my um so when we work with these medicines individually, that's in service to others. And when we
Mm.
work with others in these medicines, that's a way of working on ourselves.
Right.
But that interconnectedness is so important. That's why I'm loving also we're getting more and more ketamine providers working in groups
Yeah.
and having people experience okay, we have other people in the room. Someone's crying, someone's laughing, and that's my life. There are times when I'm
Mhm.
sad. There's times when I'm happy. This is exactly what I need now. And I feel the interconnection. I'm living the interconnection that I live every day while in ceremony or while in the therapeutic process.
Well, and it's so interesting what you just said, because I mean, I named it in my mind just like individual versus collective. I mean, is that
Hmm.
accurate? We in the United States in particular, it's so like, go, go, me, do, it's that individualistic when really the rest of the world is much more collective. I mean, that's obviously a gross generalization. But that piece about being in group, I've been wondering about because in our training program, we do group as in many other, programs. And that's always the single most impactful piece.
Mm.
And, that experiential lens is the interconnectedness. Like if somebody's crying, am I annoyed? Am I touched? Do I start to cry? Does it impact me? Just things come up for myself? But that's not just because the person's crying. That's because that's the matrix of influence that we live in community. And that's such a powerful thing to experience and to be aware of, I think.
It's such a powerful thing. And I also love this is a funny reminder
Mm.
when I think about somebody crying and I think about my judgment of, oh, poor them, or they must be having a hard experience. What I've come to learn is, oh my God, who am I to think that they're having any experience other than the one that they need?
Right.
Like, if everything is divine, why is that not divine? Why are they not having exactly what they need at that moment?
Mm.
And in watching now ceremony after ceremony after ceremony and seeing people who look like they were struggling and having an incredibly hard time and coming out saying, "Oh my God, I felt the sorrow of the world, and thank God I felt that."
Mm.
And I felt in the same ceremony the sorrow of the world and the joy of the world in the same thing. And I needed that. Oh my God, I needed to feel the sorrow to understand where my mom came from, where my grandmother came from, to understand what shaped me.
Hmm.
It's beautiful. And in the moment I start thinking I know better than they do on what they should do, now I'm trying to control them. And when I start trying to control them, I'm doing violence on them and I'm doing violence on myself. And I don't want that. I want no part of that. So I don't know what's right for anyone else besides me. My job is to hold space, to love people deeply, and then help set containers where people can do their own work.
Oh, I love that. So what suggestions do you have for people when they go into community, right? Or even when they're navigating their own psychedelic experience, and those judgments come up. those judgments towards self, those judgments towards others, and they will, because they do.
Of course.
Right. I mean, my thought is always just to like notice it, to track it, to be curious about it. I'm curious what you think. How can, when you're saying that, 5 million people in less than a year are, having, higher dose psychedelic experiences, that's a lot. So you've put a great deal of study into this. How do people navigate that? And how, as professionals, can we support people in learning to navigate that or more effectively navigate that?
We're, as professionals, we are navigating it as peers alongside of the
Right.
people we're supporting. And the awareness is the practice. It is simply, it's all the same. There is just life. There's life when we're generating resources, and there's life when we're hanging out with our family, and there's life when we're walking on the beach. It's all the same. So how do we take that, ooh, I'm being judgmental now. I've caught myself sooner. I've caught myself sooner. I've caught myself sooner. No bad me. No shame, no blame, no guilt. I'm acting today at a different level of awareness than I did yesterday and than I will tomorrow. And that's perfect. And how do I then continue to live the life that I can feel on this psychedelic experience, where I know we are all connected, where I know I am safe and loved, where I know I'm a spiritual creature having a human experience, where I know that I've layered stories on top of myself and that isn't what's important. And how can I live that with that awareness more often? How can I bring that to the dining room? How can I bring that to doing the dishes? How can I bring that to my company? How can I bring it to my kids?
Totally. I mean, that's a perfect segue into the integration piece. So, from what you might know different, but, my experience of sort of more, plant medicine ceremony, I spent a month in Brazil with the Santo Daime
Mm-hmm.
and got really interested in just the process and integration is not really part of it. In like traditional kind of contexts, integration's not really part of it. It seems to be kind of a development of more of the Western mind or the Western psyche, and that's obviously a gross generalization as well. Maybe more of a modern times kind of thing. That said, that is where we live. And, what are your thoughts about, first of all, how do you define integration?
So I want to answer this, but I really want to hear your answer on this as well, because I'd like this to be like back and forth. Because what I think about when I think about many of the wisdom keepers that kept this alive weren't in our culture. So then
Mm,
how do we, as North Americans, who's we don't have to go very far back in any of our lineages to find people who worked with plant medicine, but we do
right.
have to go back. So how do
Mm,
we work with medicine in our culture? So integration isn't a part of community-based culture because they already have community as the foundation of their
mm,
culture. So what
mm,
are we going to do in a culture that's very isolationist, very separationist, very materialistic, very capitalistic? Not that, again, not saying capitalism is wrong, but how do we, again, take these insights, awakenings, and awarenesses and bring them into our life as our tribal people, as North
mm,
Americans? And
mhm,
that is, in my mind, what the integration process is. It's turning spiritual experiences into a spiritual life. And sometimes that involves working with a coach or a therapist or a community group, but getting out of the I'm alone, I'm by myself, I'm doing it by myself, and into, oh my God, there's all the support all around me. And I need to tap into that. But what do
mhm.
you think? I mean, you spent a month with in Brazil with Santo Daime. What do you think this is?
Well, I think I came back with a extraordinary lack of integration that was quite, uh, led to spiritual emergency, frankly,
Mm-hmm.
and would not recommend that anybody do it that way.
Two
That
two
out
thumbs down, no stars. Not recommending
Well,
that.
because there wasn't an integration, and it's because I didn't land in community. So I literally went with a group from Oregon, and I was in Asheville and came back to no one and nothing. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really a recommended part of the process to reconnect back in with the group. That said, 20 some years later, I would be more assertive about getting that need met. But I have really lived experience about the importance of the integration. And I think that without it, and again, that can be, ketamine, that can be with your, ketamine assisted psychotherapy. It can be post plant medicine. It can be with friends. Sometimes there's a need for a trained professional and sometimes there's not. But I think that to me, it is just what you said, like the ability to take what comes up and recognize that it doesn't just happen there. Like, people get this one and done idea about like you do the medicine and you're fixed. And, that's a terrible misnomer because, like you said, the wisdom keepers, this was all done in the context of a village. Like, even if you had your own individual session, you still returned to community. You lived in community, you lived in the village. And while we might live with closer, super close neighbors, I think that many of us do not have a felt sense of living in community. So,
Right, we're
the
bowling alone. We're not in church like we used to be, or synagogue, or mosque. We're not in community organizations like we used to be. We are way involved in our children's lives. Um,
hmm
and and we can see how many hours people are working. And it's no wonder why we have the Surgeon General saying we have a loneliness epidemic. It's no wonder why we are overprescribing. Not that there's anything wrong with antidepressants or anti-anxieties when they work, but we are prescribing them younger and we're keeping people on them longer than they were ever meant to be.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and we have an opportunity with these medicines that aren't cures, so we're not substituting a pill for a pill. And that, I think, is we are so impatient in our culture. I want to be fixed now. Well, what if
For
you're not
sure.
broken? What if you're just living patterns and
Mm,
you're not broken, you're just not aligned with yourself. And maybe it's a relationship with this medicine used from time to
mm,
time that helps um remind ourselves of I don't need to think about this the way I've been thinking about it. I don't need to behave this way as I've been behaving. I don't need to try to please whoever I've been trying to please, living
mm.
or dead.
Yeah.
And we use these medicines as ways to do those things, but they don't cure us. They help us
Mhm.
remember what's already here.
Well, that's really powerful. And I think that it's so, for people go in, I see this all the time, that as if they're going to go in to a medicine work and it's going to be all about aha moments. And I think that psychotherapy kind of trains us for that
Mhm.
when really it's really an experiential process. It's, the capacity to notice what is up, to be curious about it. And then in integration to kind of apply, like, oh, what does this tell me about myself? What does this tell me about my life? And then what does this tell me about the way that I engage with self world and others? Like, because it's a lot about the process and the patterns and the experience, not just the content. So I try to really steer people away from the aha moment, like as if it's all about digging in for some realization, because that's not always the way it goes. Sometimes it's not at all about that.
Yeah, I think a lot about what I call rushing the language gate. So we have these
Mm,
experiences, and I was trained to how do I now? I need to document what happened immediately. I need to
mhm,
tell somebody what happened immediately.
mm,
And the
mhm,
moment I start forming words out of an embodied experience, I start
mhm.
hardening what happened
Right.
versus giving myself the permission to, oh my God, I haven't felt that much gratitude.
Mm,
I haven't wept for joy. And I I have this language that my body speaks that I don't pay attention to. And
mhm,
what are these feelings and emotions, this language without words that I push down because I'm so in my head all the time?
mm.
And can I allow myself the freedom to just live in the emotion for
Yeah,
a little bit longer?
I love that. And live in the body. Alicia Skye was the last guest. It hasn't been published yet. And she's just an incredible experiential and somatic educator
Mhm.
and facilitator. And we were talking about exactly that. How do you bring the body in as a bridge for integration? Like I'll take notes during every session and then we'll go back over the notes. And so there is a real danger. And like you said, and kind of suddenly we're hardening that experience into as if it all is in the notes. And I've been experimenting with tools and strategies to be more in the body, to be more in the emotion and to build the bridge with the experiential process and to keep it away from to make it less about the story and more
Mhm.
about the experience.
Yeah, I love that. And as everything we keep talking about, Sandy, it's all ands. And there
Mhm.
will be moments of incredible clarity. And there might be just one in a 6 hour journey or 1 hour ketamine. Um, but and those insights and awakenings can be so powerful. And so
Mm-hmm.
it can be both. How do I allow myself to stay in my body? And when I do have that insight or something that's so clear, the download, whatever you want to call it, how do I pay attention to that and be like, oh, okay, I see that I was behaving in a way that wasn't in alignment. And I can look at that. I cannot put the shame, blame, and guilt on myself. I can avoid using the word should and creating
Mm-hmm.
violent on myself that I was bad for not doing this. I can
Yeah.
just see it. I can understand it and I can move forward and do differently next time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how do we support people in that? You have obviously been in lots of communities and witnessed and observed, and how do we help people with that?
Yeah, I
What are
think your
what are the
community, I think the
best
people,
ways?
I think the people who are in the Living Medicine Institute and are working with you are doing it. And we're all, I think part one is recognizing that I don't know. I can
Mm,
help support, I can help techniques, but I can't make you have any experience. It's all you. You've got to do it. And all I can do is give good techniques that might put you into a framework to help you do this or to help you remember what you already know.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it starts with, from my perspective, it starts with that. It starts with we are peers and we are assuming different roles in this moment. But every time I'm working with somebody else, I'm learning from them as they're learning from me. And I
Mm.
love that. I love being in that relationship. Um, I think,
I
yeah,
tell
go
people
ahead.
suspend the need to know.
Mm,
Both as like a professional, if you're kind of in the role of working with the integration process, and also even, as we're navigating it, like suspend the need to know. We don't, which is really difficult, and I think the more training you have as a professional, sometimes the harder it is. Mhm.
yeah, and
Stay in the curiosity.
stay in the curiosity, the question of why am I talking? When we're working with somebody, like why am I talking? Like
Right.
I don't know. They've had 40 years of life before I'm looking at them,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I mean it's everybody heals on their own.
Yeah.
So, and techniques, trust, confidence, support, co-creation of conditions that are ripe for people to have realizations and awakenings, and it will happen for them when it's supposed to happen for them and not a moment sooner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. It's not my job to fix anybody. It's my
Yeah.
job to work on myself. It's my job to stay connected with spirit. It's my job to walk with awareness and presence. It's my
Mm-hmm.
job to love unconditionally. And I can do that in every aspect of my work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So I'm curious, which pieces of that, like it's my job to stay connected to myself. It's my job to stay connected to spirit. It's my job to stay connected to community, to stay in unconditional love. And I'm just curious, for yourself, what is the intersection with, spirit and medicine work and the experiential process, right? Because one of the things I love about what you're saying that I want to just highlight is, again, we learn in the medicine, but it's about how we apply it on the beach with our family,
In the
noticing
kitchen.
that I'm in
Yeah.
judgment,
Hmm.
noticing that I'm annoyed, being curious about that, becoming aware of our own internal patterns and the way that we navigate life's frustrations and joys. I mean, ultimately, to me, that's where the relevance comes from. And I'm just curious, you keep mentioning the spiritual piece, and I know that's really important to you in your work and in your way of being in the world. And maybe you could just speak to that.
It is, I like that question. It is when I'm working with somebody and something is, when I'm feeling something, ooh, that seems like a bad choice, or that I
Mm,
don't like them, or I don't like this, or I don't like this behavior. Um, the practice for me is reminding myself that that is my reaction to
mm,
them. It is not
mm-hmm,
them, it is me.
mm,
And then also, why are they here? Why is this person in front of me? Okay, well, I created them so I could learn from them, and they've
mm-hmm.
created me so that I can ex- share what I have to share.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it's always from each of us, it's always our practice.
Mm,
So again, sometimes the energy is flowing more, the resources are flowing more in one direction than the other, but it's each of our practices. This is each of our lives. This is it. This is all we get in this
mm,
particular existence. And we can have a longer spiritual experience, but in this human experience, this is it.
mm,
Um, yeah, so I guess that for me it comes back to that. That is the practice, and that is what I try to bring to whether again it's working with a medical provider and how can they incorporate some spiritual best practices into the delivery of legal ketamine. Amazing. Let's
mhm,
talk about what does that look like for you? What does it feel like for you? Why would that be important? Why are you even talking about spirit in your practice? Why do you care? Okay,
mm,
let's get clear on those things. And then there's all sorts of techniques that we can talk about and what kind of spiritual practices and on and on. And or when I'm working with ceremonial leaders, how do you want to create a container where people can come and do their work? What does that look like? What is it? And then what does it mean to take the best practices from what medicine has learned? So how do you do a medical intake? What are you looking for their mental health background, their physical background, their supplements, their prescriptions? Who is the expert on your team or two experts that you're working with? Are you working with a spirit pharmacist as an outsourcer? Great. You're not, do you really have the knowledge to do that yourself? And do you want to take that risk and you understand what those are? So,
mm,
so there is this is such an opportunity for collaboration between medical and spiritual in both directions. And what I hope that some people are hearing is we need a spiritual pathway to be legal so that it's all above ground so we can have collaborations without our friends with licenses being worried about losing their licenses.
right.
And that does not seem good for anybody, not for the people participating, not for the people holding the licenses. It's not good for safety. It's not good for the economy. It's just not good.
Well, and then how do we not exclude people who don't have licenses for whatever reason, while also recognizing that a license is quite simply like an expectation of a foundation of knowledge and, an ethics board and regulatory accountability. Right. So I don't profess to have the answer, but I think it's important to keep asking the question.
And it's also, I love that. And I love gently reminding people that a license in one thing isn't the same as knowledge of another. So we
Mm,
both know people who are practicing now with ketamine, um, who've maybe experienced it on themselves, maybe once or twice. Some people practicing haven't experienced on themselves. I don't understand how you can effectively work with people in altered states if you don't know what this means. What does it
mm,
mean to feel true horror and true ultimate joy and be
yeah.
terrified and be out of your mind and be afraid of not coming back and then of coming back and feeling of one thing. I don't know how you do that without understanding what those things feel like
Yeah.
effectively. Um,
It's interesting because and at the Living Medicine Institute, we, in the level one clinical intensive, people do 7 medicine sessions of all, the main 4 routes of administration of ketamine. And I think it's of critical importance, one, that you have, experience of all the different types, but two, that there is a cumulative effect. Like, because you begin to realize, like through doing multiple sessions and, proximity with intention, that it isn't just the medicine. Like it's really, in my opinion, the best way to understand that the whole integration journey, it's preparation, medicine, integration, and being in community and going to work, and noticing how the impact is showing up in your life and how your perceptions, might be different and how your relationships might be different. And I think that's really critical. So I appreciate that you said that.
it's so critical. And I love that you've created a program where people who don't know why they might want to take 7 ketamine sessions are coming into a program. And then even if they have the greatest awakening and insights on session number one, and I'm ready to go do this, amazing. But you've got
Right.
6 more to go through. And I see that all the
Right.
time where a psychiatrist or a psychologist will come to a ceremony, be like, oh, okay, I get it now. And now I'm ready to do this. And what I gently and lovingly suggest is amazing. And spend some more time in ceremony, spend some more time in psychedelic assisted therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, not necessarily because anything is, quote, wrong with you, but
Yeah.
because I want to understand how this medicine works. I want to have a relationship with this medicine. I want to be able to call on all aspects of this medicine when I'm delivering it in whatever practice I'm going to deliver it in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting because it's, kind of that parallel process and kind of the way in which you show up for one thing is the way in which you show up for all
Mm.
things. So, you talk about psychedelics as being a catalyst, not the change agent, but the catalyst themselves. And to me, that is, again, it's not just about the time and the medicine. It's about how you feel as you head into the ceremony. It's about, what happens for you when you're done. It's about, do you want to share it? Do you feel comfortable being in connection? Can you receive care? Or what happens when your body armor comes up? And, how do we just like consistently
Mm.
navigate to reach a place of increased connection to self, world, and others, which is where I really think that's where it's at.
I love you just said how we show up in one way is how we show up in all ways. And I get
Mhm.
that expression. I've seen that. I've lived that in my own patterns
Yeah.
and behaviors. And what I love so much about this medicine is it gives me the opportunity to break that pattern
Mm,
and to say, just because for 50 years, how I've
mm,
shown up in one way has shown up in others, if I can get to the root of that, I might be able to move through this life with different patterns. And maybe those
mhm,
different patterns might feel more satisfactory to me, might feel closer to more joy,
mm,
less sorrow.
mm.
Um, so it's an and. I get that. And I also constantly am reminding myself that maybe this is the ceremony for so and so or for me.
Yeah. So that kind of brings, me to one kind of like, what's the end game? So here's an interest here. Let me give you some context. Here's what I mean by that. The end game meaning, why do we do this? Because, the scientific method, which is of critical importance, in my opinion, has done, is reductionist. Like we have to kind of, because we only want to manipulate, we want to manipulate as few variables as possible in order so that we can have, faith in the outcome, that the outcome is at least moderately due to the intervention. Like that's the essence of psychological research, really. Manipulate as few variables as possible so that we can have, kind of see that the outcome is likely to be related to this. But that's inherently reductionistic. And it has to be, about symptom reduction because that's how we got on the map. Like that's how psychedelics, in terms of like getting towards a more of a legalized or therapeutic application landscape, they had to get on the map because we had to identify that. That said, the things that you're talking about are more about increased joy, increased ease, increased connection to spirit, more connection to community. And so,
Mm.
I'm just curious, kind of, I'm aware of the time but just, how we can reconcile that and what are we, take symptom reduction off the table because that's inherently a part of it. But what are we trying to achieve? Like what's the hope here?
So I want to put symptom reduction back on the table because
Okay.
what are our symptoms? So we have symptoms that we've pathologized, we put in the DSM, we that are behavioral manifestations of um out of alignment of whatever that is, and that can feel like different things to different people. So some people can feel depression or anxiety. It can express itself in workaholism and OCD and alcoholism and overeating, undereating. We can pick our behavior that is an
Mm,
expression of being out of alignment. And weirdly, in our culture, we will put someone who is a workaholic, um, isolationist narcissist on the cover of a magazine and not call that a symptom, and
mhm,
yet pity somebody who can't get out of their bed because they are so feeling so much depression or anxiety or out of touch with the world. So
mhm,
in my mind, the end game for all of this, for me, is, can I be connected? Do I believe in something else greater than me? Am I connected to spirit?
mhm,
Um, and am I feeling gratitude every day for the trillions upon trillions upon trillions of accidents that had to happen so that I could be alive and be able to experience this?
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, can I eat? Can I have shelter? Can I do the hierarchy of needs? Yes, I want those things. But they continue to become less and less important as I've realized that my joy is carries with me regardless of what I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say that. And I know I'm saying that from a place of privilege, and I get that. I totally get that.
Yeah.
And I believe that is true. So I think the end game for all of us is how can we remember that we are spiritual creatures having a human experience, and how lucky we are to be alive.
I love that. So, anything else that you want to share? Like, if you were kind of like to put anything else, whether it be that message or, others, like what else would you like, to share with the world right
I
now?
mean, I could truly, I can't, I love what you're doing with the Living Medicine and the
Mm-hmm.
Institute. I love that um, medical professionals can go there and have experience after experience after experience, can not again because, oh, I needed to do this. No, but I chose to do this. I created this in my life so that I could have these experiences, so that I could understand more, so that I can have more understanding of who I am. And once I have more understanding of who I am, I'm better able to work with others.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm working with others, I'm reminding myself all the time of who I am and what do I stand for and how do I move through this world. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful process, and I love that while it's ketamine today, it's certainly equipped for other medicines in the future. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's exciting. It's exciting that you're bringing spirit into science. You're talking about ands and not ors. You're talking about collaboration. You're talking about there is such a what Alan Watts used to talk about in the old days. We had healers, and they healed both the mind and the spirit, and we've separated them in our current culture. It's time to bring them back because we are whole people, and whole people
Mm-hmm.
have brains and spirits. And how do we get those together?
Oh, I love that. And out of that, right, comes healing. So,
And healing towards, again, becoming whole,
yeah.
not broken, whole, remembering that we've had it all the entire time.
Uh-huh.
And we forgot. We were told we had to be somebody. We had to work hard. We had to do more. We had to get our credentials. We had to write our books. We had to do our things, where we weren't enough. And none
Mm-hmm.
of it was true.
Yeah, I love that. Remembering who we are and moving towards wholeness. So, thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate that. This was a really rich and interesting discussion, and I'm really grateful to you for sharing your wisdom.
Mm,
Are there places where people can find you or follow you?
absolutely. I'm active on Instagram and on LinkedIn. My site is mattzemon.com. And if I do calls all the time on people who are looking to how do I take these psychedelic experiences and deepen them into a practice, and I love talking with people about what options are out there for them. So thank you for having me on. Thank you for the work you do. And thank you for bringing this particular topic up. I mean, you've had some good friends of mine on your podcast, and I love that you keep bringing this back as a conversation and bringing different perspectives. I mean, everyone from Dick Schwartz to the Mithoffers to Rick Doblin, you've had really beautiful people on your episodes or on your podcast.
Good. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's just an honor that people are willing to keep having the conversation.
Oh
So,
my gosh. We need
all
to
right.
keep having these conversations. That's how we normalize this. That's how
I
we
know,
help.
right?
That part of our transformative consciousness is normalizing these conversations. So thank you for doing it.
Well, thank you. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. And stay tuned.
Thanks for listening to Living Medicine. We'll see you again next time. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.